I think we're here on Earth to try to make our little piece of it as healthy and prosperous as we can for as many as we can. And I think the work of local news is in part to bind us together in those values, and that without local news, we can't do that. I went to the University of Michigan during a tumultuous period in our history. I was in college during the Pentagon Papers and Watergate. I was an English major who really had given no thought to what I was going to do after college. But Watergate gave me the answer, that you can actually hold power to account. That's really what gave me great respect for journalism. I was lucky enough to work for a few great legendary editors. And they're the ones who taught me what fairness is, why it's important for news operations to be independent. Those are the lessons that have stayed with me, that informed my work and my passions today. I think giving back to the community became important to me when I realized I could. The cause that means the most to me is the cause of nonprofit journalism. I think it's easy if you live in a place like Madison or even Milwaukee to kind of shrug and say, what's all this local journalism about? Because there really is relatively a lot of local journalism here. That is not true in most of Wisconsin. In that kind of vacuum, how do you even begin to think about what's important? What you want to have done where you live? How do you know when there's just silence? Shortly after I moved to Madison, I was at a lunch where I met Andy Hall, who was the founder of what was then called the Wisconsin Center for Investigative Journalism. And at that point, the internet had clearly disrupted the business side of every form of media. And so the revenue streams for traditional newspapers certainly had just collapsed. Andy and his wife Dee founded the Wisconsin Center for Investigative Journalism because investigative journalism was the first thing that fell from newspapers. It was slow to produce, labor intensive. So I admired what Andy and Dee set out to do, and then I began working with him mostly on the business side. Since 2013, 2/3 of journalists have disappeared from their jobs in Wisconsin. In 2023-24, 19 more newspapers went out of business. So, not surprisingly, the focus of what was then the Wisconsin Center for Investigative Journalism broadened. The title became Wisconsin Watch, but its mission now is much more focused on local journalism because those are the outlets that we have lost.
So Wisconsin Watch's mission is to help our communities of Wisconsin be strong, connected, and informed. We do that by providing local reporting that lets people know what's going on and help make our communities better.
Studies have long shown that local journalism leads to increased civic participation. It leads to higher voter turnout, decreased polarization in communities. It leads to less fraud, less waste, and it leads to a stronger sense of community.
For the future, I see Wisconsin Watch as being the essential key to rebuilding our state's local news ecosystem. We're building out local, regional reporting teams to cover all the gaps that have been left behind. Anyone who shares our values, we will work with them and make sure that the most important stories that aren't being told do get the coverage they need, and that the big, deep, investigative, and explanatory and solution stories get the resources they need to be told to make a difference.
I think this is a moment in history when local news is more important than it's ever been. That's what ties us together. That's what helps us know where we live. I think if we have no idea what our city councils are deciding, what big issues, how our money's being spent, we will find ourselves with bigger, deeper problems, greater divides, and there's no other way this work will be supported now except through philanthropy. This is nonprofit work, and I think we have to support it as we do other public goods, community centers, libraries. In my very first meeting at Madison Community Foundation, I knew I wanted to set up a fund of some kind to benefit Wisconsin Watch. I was sort of blown away by how easy the Community Foundation made it to execute what my wishes were. And not long after that, I realized that Madison Community Foundation was the place that should handle all of my charitable giving. So I returned and we set the rest of it up, and I don't think about it except from time to time when I feel good that that's all well organized and done.
Gifts like Barbara Johnson's legacy gift and the gift of all members of our Legacy Society are incredibly important to our work. Knowing that people include us in their estate plans is both inspiring and humbling. And it strengthens our ability to continue to serve the people of Wisconsin for generations to come.
Thinking through what's most important to you, what your priorities are, and that's really a question of what your values are, and doing it sooner than later when you can begin to see the effect of your gift is really rewarding. Wisconsin has such a long history as a proud, thoughtful place where we care for one another. This is part of that. I want it to be part of that. I hope 50 years from now, people look at the state of Wisconsin and think, wow, they did something right way back early on to create this thriving network of local news sources. I would be really proud if my gifts were thought to be part of the beginning of this.